Welcome back to the Lizardmen campaign with kroq-gar. Last time we wiped out a ton of Skaven, which allowed us to complete our first ritual. Then we rampaged west and knocked all of the Skaven out of our part of the world, so that was nice, defeating one of their legendary lords and main factions as well. Then we had to declare war on the Yellow Lizard faction because they own territory that we need for admin reasons, and we won our first battle with them. So we're right after that battle now, just going to move in and take the enemy settlement. We do need to take all of the Yellow Lizard settlements to complete some of our provinces, if you remember. And that's just so we have more building slots to work with and can use commandments. Allows you to control public order more and is just generally easier and more OCD friendly to have complete provinces. The question now is, what is their main force going to do? And I noted here that my replenishment is absolutely insane. Even units that lost half their men will just go straight back to full strength because I've given kroq-gar all of the replenishment upgrading skills, which just makes fighting and losing not a problem at all. You'll just go straight back to full strength. That helps us be nice and aggressive. We can see the Yellow Lizards are running off to attack us to the south right now, so the thing to do here, which I'm actually not going to do because I messed this up, is to set up an ambush on the edge of their territory so that they don't know we're there, and then we could sneak over and take their settlement while they're not there. But I misclicked while trying to unselect my army and ended up just running into their territory, and that causes this to happen. Their army goes back into their settlement and garrisons it, so now that's not going to be easy. That's a walled settlement with a decent garrison already, so with a full stack inside, getting in will be hard, but they are still committed to attacking us, it seems. They send a couple of units down to start doing something. So anyway, this was annoying. I'd messed up, but I still thought I could recover from here if I moved here onto the road that heads down to our southern territories and then set up another ambush, because if this works and the enemy are still aggroed onto that settlement down to the south, which they should be because the enemy AI's like tactical aggro doesn't change unless their borders change, then we'll ambush them here. There is a right you can use to make your ambush chance go up to basically 100%, so you always get it. But you have to have done an ambush before for some reason to actually use that. Fortunately, we still get the ambush here as they come out, so it all goes to plan. The enemy army is pretty good though, so we only have a tiny advantage on the balance bar. We're going to have to fight carefully here. We need to kill as much as possible so that if we then go and besiege the settlement, when the enemy's garrison is added onto things, we still have an advantage. So we can't really lose things in this fight, ideally. So the ambush starts, we're right next to them, so the fight will get started pretty quickly. We'll just start running at them from various directions, and really our main weakness here is just army composition, which we'll see as the fight goes on. Timmy storming in to get things started. That's what I call the Stegodon, by the way, if anyone was confused, and I can't remember why I'm calling him that. Anyway, some of our units were really far off from where the enemy were, so it's going to take them a while to get into the fight. Others going to get straight into things. We'll just grind against the enemy. Our units, while mostly the same, are slightly better, so a grind isn't too bad. Now here's the composition problem. At the back of their army they have all of these ranged units, and our army is very weak on the ranged and has no cavalry. That means we don't really have an answer to their flyers or their ranged units. We just have to take the shots, and that's not really the ideal way to deal with ranged units. Timmy's just spaced out there for a second, eventually starts getting back into the fight. I think it's just animations being weird. This game and Warhammer in general has like a very really inconsistent animation quality. It ranges from amazing to like the worst possible you can imagine, i.e. just no animations for things. So it's very weird. Anyway, continuing on. I'm going pretty heavy on their lord. They're trying to take him down, and he actually dies the second I scroll away from him just to be annoying. I think kroq-gar might have eaten him there because he's not on the chair anymore, and kroq-gar just showed up, so I don't know exactly how he achieved that kill, but he's done it, and hopefully that will demoralize the enemy, but didn't really have any noticeable effect, I must say. At the back of the enemy army, things still going pretty badly because of all those ranged units just skirmishing around, and we're just taking fire from them. We've got our poor skink priest trying to stop the enemy's flyers from throwing jabs at our men by just distracting them. He actually almost died, had to get him out of there, and the enemy skirmishers barely let him escape. We just about got away before he died. And the rest of the fight continues grinding on, and It's not the most favourable grind because we're not that much better than them. We are the same unit at the end of the day, so just having a few buffs doesn't really turn things in our favour. So we're going to take pretty hefty losses. We need to get some tactical blows against the enemy with rear attacks and getting our hero units into play. So slowly that is folding them up from the top end of the column. Our Stegodon shooting away with the ballista. This is the last battle, I think, where I actually tried using that unit as artillery. As people rightly pointed out in the comments to the last part, that unit should not be treated as artillery. It's just a joke. It should be just used like a normal feral. Stegodon just as a melee unit. So anyway, the fight's starting to come to an end now. We've killed enough of the enemy's stuff that the balance bar's super far in our favour, and just hoping to get a chain route on all the things we can't catch. There in the background, by the way, is the place where we fought the Skaven in the previous part. So it seems that somehow we're fighting on the map just over from this one, despite being on the other side of the continent. I guess what they've done here is they've just made a little palette of themed maps for each area, and then it just picks one when you do a fight. So they don't actually represent where you are like they did in some of the previous games. It's all because in Warhammer 2 they have at last switched over to using hand-designed maps, so the designers actually make some battle maps, and rather than using procedural generation, which they used to do, and the procedural generation almost always just made a map with nothing on it, just flat or a very gentle slope. So the maps are much better, but it seems there aren't very many of them. Anyway, the battle does end once we eventually chain route everything. It's a decisive victory, but it's actually not all that good because quite a lot of the enemy stuff escaped, and as I was complaining about back in the first part of this campaign, it doesn't simulate any sort of pursuit or breaking up of the enemy's army after their defeat, so everything that's alive on the frame the battle ends will go away with the army, and that means quite a lot of stuff's actually still alive. Because the battle ended by routing rather than like outright destruction, it's all still alive afterwards because there's no simulated route phase, as I said. So that just means we haven't damaged them all that much here. I can get a tiny bit of replenishment by hiring some of the captured lizards, and they're just going to run back, go straight back into their settlement, and then they'll get replenishment. So they're actually probably going to go back to be in about the same damage state as we are, and ultimately that ambush didn't achieve anything. So that's nice, and they are still committing to that attack, just sending like a couple of units into our territory. Don't really know what they plan to achieve with that. Unlikely to achieve very much, suffice to say. So after the fight, I was a little bit confused about what I should do here, because the enemy haven't really been put at any disadvantage by what we've done. So a siege here is difficult, but I wanted to come and take a look anyway, just because going back would be very time inefficient and definitely just put us back to square one. And the enemy do have the advantage here, plus of course they have their walls, so not a very nice scenario. I'm just going to put them under siege for now, because we might be able to get them outside for a fight, and it turns out that we can. They're going to sally. I think the AI always sallies if it has an advantage on the balance bar, even if it's small, as far as I know. So we do get that sally. Just means we can fight the fight without the walls being there, which will make things easier in practice. So let's head in and do it. And the first thing I noticed as this fight started is that we're actually back on that map where we fought the Skaven, next to the point where the ambush took place. I guess being next to the ambush makes sense because we are actually next to where we did that ambush. But I don't know, it's deja vu from the Skaven battle for some reason. We've got our Stegodon there set up for some ballista attacks over the cliffs, as well as the skinks from before. I'm using pretty much the same formation as before. Now I encountered a problem here and discovered the solution to it. The pterodons caused your units to skirmish away from them at a range that is greater than our skinks' attack range. So that means our skinks actually haven't been able to attack these pterodons, because when they move up to attack them, they move into the skirmish range and immediately move back without firing. So for this battle I turned that off, and we're going to have a bit more success as a result of that. I'm sure that was screwing me over in the past as well. I've also put some skinks out in front of the army to tank all of the enemy's ranged units. There's so much stuff down there. I don't want them thinning out our melee line, so we're just going to take it on the skinks. The skinks are useless once they're out of ammo anyway, and they only have 3 javelins, so they run out of ammo pretty much straight away. So a good use of them is to stand here and take that fire. They have shields, which makes them slightly better against ranged fire than other stuff that doesn't have shields. I think it's a certain percentage chance to just block attacks entirely, so that is nice. And of course the enemy's army is eventually going to come in and get involved, and we'll have to get out of the way. Try to use the Skink Priest's Wind Blast ability there. It's pretty good at hitting lots of stuff at the same time, but it doesn't do any damage as far as I can tell, so not very useful, and it's the sort of thing we probably won't use too much in the future as a result of discovering how bad it is in this battle. I tried to use the skink bomb as well, but that also doesn't really do anything, so our skink priest being very ineffective and needs to get out of there. The main fight going to start here, and here you can see all my units are facing the wrong way, and I'm not sure if they were actually facing the wrong way in the battle. Did I make a massive mistake here when setting up the formation? The little flag thing seemed to be on the right side. The flag's usually on the front. It's just all the models are facing the wrong way, so maybe it's just a quirk of the replay. I don't know. I actually deleted the original battle footage, so hopefully that wasn't a big mistake. I guess if it was, we got away with it because we weren't immediately routed for rear attack bonuses or anything like that. So the fight will now get started properly. Mostly, once again, just Saurus on Saurus actions, and neither side having a particular advantage, but we have a slight edge due to our buffs. The enemy commander there in trouble. Kroq-gar's getting in there to finish him off. We should be able to take him down pretty easily, no problems. The enemy's pterodons doing a bombing run, hitting a couple of our men. They're not quite accurate enough, and diving into that melee, which is good for us. We want to damage them in melee if we can, so glad to let them sit there. There's another wind blast, and just look how much stuff it hits, but it doesn't do any damage. It just takes a tiny sliver off the enemy's health. Not really worth the magic cost of doing it, even with a perfect scenario for doing it where you just can hit everything. Here's a much better magic spell our skink priest can do. It's a debuff that affects everything in a 40-meter radius, so all of the enemies now have reduced attack and armor, which are pretty much the primary things you want to reduce on the enemy. So that's good. Just makes the melee go a little bit faster in our favor. Now our kroq-gars are behind the enemy's army, having snuck around it, and I'm going to try and use them to take out the enemy's ranged units. Kroq-gars are faster than everything else we have, at least in theory, so they might be able to catch them. I think they have just about the same speed as the skinks, but the AI was pretty good at not being drawn into melee. I thought they might all just cluster around me and want to fight, but they didn't, so it didn't work. And here we go, here's me finally learning to stop worrying and love using the artillery as a melee unit. We just charge in with our blessed Stegodon and start doing the damage. We can just ignore the fact it's technically a ballista. And Timmy getting in there to show his older brother, I guess, that it's not just him doing the work. Shall we call the other one Tommy, just for consistency? And I've also got some units coming in for a rear attack on the enemy's main blob. I didn't use all the units that I had prepared for a rear attack. Like, I'd circled around quite a lot of units, but some of them I ended up turning out to attack the enemy's skirmishers instead, along with the kroq-gars, because the kroqs were having trouble. They're really powerful, but their attack speed is very low, so they don't really kill these units quickly, and after a while the AI gets bored of fighting and skirmishes away again, so we kind of missed our opportunity to rout them or something, and so we're just getting drawn further and further away and taking more and more damage. At least the main fight's going well. All of the enemy's units are in primal mode, so they can't give them orders anymore, and soon enough we'll get them to rout as well. The Stegodon's just going absolutely wild in the middle of the enemy ranks, plus they're totally surrounded. We'll be taking a decent amount of damage ourselves as well, but I'm sure the enemy are taking more, and eventually it turns into a rout. Everything in this area routs, and they want to just attack it and kill as much as possible. Since this is a Sally battle, this is our chance to weaken their siege defenses pretty nicely. The Stegodons will enjoy that, I am sure. A lot of them are going to be able to escape, unfortunately, and once again our lack of cavalry will be screwing us over here, as all of those enemy units are getting out of our encirclement. The kroqs still in big trouble. They're actually almost dead because the enemy have spread out now, so we can't catch them all in melee, and we're always going to get shot by something no matter where we go. And just as the unit's actually about to die, there is a chain rout that causes all of the skirmishers to leave the fight. So we were pretty lucky there. That could have gotten much worse. It only had to go a bit worse to go much worse, basically. Get a bit of revenge by attacking those blessed skinks there, but they're pretty fast. They'll be escaping from the fight. So now there was a pursuit, and I had to play all of it just to see if I could damage the enemy. I tried another wind blast on a group of enemies, and even when the enemy is really damaged, it doesn't really kill them. This time I did kill a few of them. You can see bodies on the floor, so it does do some damage, that's confirmed. Just not very much, no considerable amount. I can also attack them in melee with the pterodon. The pterodon's pretty fast, of course, but its melee stats are super low, so it doesn't really do anything. The only real unit we have for doing the pursuit turned out to be Tommy, because as part of his blessed eliteness, he has a special trait which gives him unlimited stamina. So as the enemy get exhausted running away, our Stegodon can chase after them, and although Stegodons aren't all that fast, a fresh Stegodon can catch up with exhausted Saurus, as we see here, and now start doing a bit of damage. So he probably managed to get a few dozen kills as the enemy escaped by just trampling them down. Here's the ultimate result. It was only a close victory. They did do a lot of damage grinding against our front line there, and we killed something like half of them. It wasn't as much as I'd hoped for. I wanted to wipe them out to the point when we could definitely take the enemy settlement, but we've just kind of evened things out now. Both sides now have about the same amount of numbers, but the enemy will still have their walls, so it's not going to be a one-sided thing like I hoped, and it seems their little raiding force has realised that some trouble is going down back in their settlement and is coming home. So the question now is, what's the balance bar? It was a little bit better than it was before. We've got a bit of an advantage now, but it's still nothing where we can guarantee an easy win. I'm being paranoid because if I lose any full units, it's going to be really hard for me to get them back, so I don't want to take a fight where some unit might get trapped somewhere and die, basically. But we were really lucky in that the Yellow Lizard army decides that, you know what, we are going to go and make that attack in the south that they were trying to do earlier. They go back to that plan by the looks of things, and that was the worst possible timing because now they're not in the siege. We're going to have a pretty easy time. The Dark Elves are starting the next ritual. You can see we've actually had enough plaques to do it for a while. I'm just holding off. I used to think the ritual was a race and that you had to do it. It's actually just a race to the finish. It doesn't matter if you're the first to do the first 4 rituals. You just have to be first to do the last one, and you still gain plaques even if you haven't done the previous ritual, so it doesn't matter basically that we're not doing it. We'll just do it later. So in we go. We take out that settlement super easy, as it turns out. That's going to make things nice and smooth for us to carry on and chase the Yellow Lizards. They don't have the strength to take any of our stuff. We just need to finish them off. But I noticed they had this settlement out here on the island. I had no idea. That used to be an elf settlement. I guess they just took it early in the game. So we might have to avoid destroying their faction, because going out there would be pretty annoying and would ruin my plan to just stick on my own continent and then try and do the rituals. You can see my replenishment is off the charts once again. We'll be back to full strength next time. So regarding the rituals, I'm checking out here where I need to go to do it, and it's pretty much the same place as the first one, I think. So we need to walk down to the southern end of the continent to take the last yellow settlement that we need, and then we can head back up the other side to get into position. And we've got all the time in the world to do it. I think we're still winning on ritual currency, so we probably could even just wait and do all the rituals at once right at the end or something, but we might as well get ready for it since we're in a position to do it once we finished off the Yellow Lizards. They actually want a peace treaty right now. The only way I was going to accept that was if they gave me this settlement, which they can do if they confederate with me. That is an option, but they're not going to take that. And I realised I probably should have checked if they wanted to confederate before the war started. I suspect they wouldn't have wanted to, but if they had, we could have avoided this entire thing. Maybe I'll try that on the Orange Lizards later on. So I had to chase their army for a bit. It was just running down south and running conveniently along the route my army had to take anyway, so it was no problem for me to chase them. I needed to come around here to get to their other settlement. So we destroyed their main force on the way, all very good, and then I switched into force march, and I could actually go all the way over to this siege. That siege has just been going for a very long time. We were at the point where we were going to win anyway because we were starving the enemy out, but we can just speed that up by a turn or two by auto-resolving that with the main force. There we go. So we've got all the territory we need, and we've almost secured all of our provinces apart from those bits owned by the Orange Lizards, but I'm going to ignore them for now. So we can get a peace treaty with the remaining Yellow Lizards out on the island. I don't want them to bother me, and they agree to peace and non-aggression. They didn't want to trade, which was kind of annoying. That would have been helpful. We probably could have made quite a lot of money off that. But we can get a little cash payment up front just to make it go down nice and easy, and hopefully the non-aggression pact will make it unlikely for them to betray us, because we need some peace and quiet to get ready for the inevitable problems the ritual will cause. I also remembered at this point that I'm technically at war with the elves. Luckily they haven't done anything against me, and they didn't want to end the war, so hopefully that Cold War will just continue. So yes, we'll set up for the rituals now, and I'll get into the mess that caused in the next part.